Hi, this is Rick for EDU Mobile. In this demo, we're going to talk about the simplest form of intent. We have an activity, we want to display another activity, and we need to use an intent to do that. So the first thing I'm going to look at here is I'm going to prepare for my activity to actually fire. I already have, by the boilerplate code, an activity set up to be the main activity in my Android manifest file. This has an intent filter which says basically if there is a launcher icon for this activity, launch the activity from the launcher application, which is really just an activity that wraps up all of the other activities in Android. So we really don't need an intent filter even for the simplest form of intent. All we need to do is specify a name. And the name is .detail activity. Now you can see up here that I do have a class corresponding to that. We'll look at that here in just a minute. In my main activity, on its the layout file, I've got a button. That button has an on-click handler, and I'm also pulling the remember, I'm also pulling the text from a string resource. So string button text is the show detail text string. You can look at that in the source code. So now in our main activity, I have a button handler show detail, view, and I'm calling that view. And I set up an intent. Anytime we want to do something else from an activity, we need to have an intent. If we want to start another activity, if we want to start a service, we need to have an intent. And in the simplest form of intent, I provide the intent, the context, which is this activity in this case, and then the class of our new activity that we want to show, detailActivity.class. And then finally, I start the activity with this intent as the parameter. So let's look at detail activity. It is just simply displaying its layout in the onCreate method. So if I look at its layout, we can see that I have a single text view, and it's just pulling from the strings resource file a string called detail text. And if I look at that particular string, I'll see that that string says this is the detail. All right, so now how does this work? When the main activities button is pressed, the intent is set up, and then a new activity is started. Because the intent points to the detail activity class, the detail activity intent, or the detail activity, will be opened. So in main activity, when detail activity is opened, it will completely obscure main activity screen, and that will force main activity into the stopped state because it's completely obscured. The detail activity will then go through created, started, and resumed. And then when the detail activity is stopped, the main activity will go through on restart, on start, and finally on resume, and it will be resumed. So let's go ahead and run the app and see very simply how this works. So here's our app running. This is main activity, and we have the button show detail. And when we press this button, the second activity will come up. Everything's a little bit slow in the emulator, but this is the second activity. This is our detail activity, and it says this is the detail, getting that from the strings values table. And then if I go back on this activity, I will get back to the main activity, and here we are. So I can do this several times, and each time I press the button, I'll get the detail activity, and then I'll go back to the main activity. And again, because we're in the emulator, this is going to run several times slower than it would on an actual device. Thank you very much.